Today I'm going to show you how to crochet the continuous Christmas tree or just tree garland. These patterns are super fun because we have no ends to weave in. We are creating the chain and the tree motifs as we go throughout this project. So when you're done, on your two ends you'll have your strands, and you can literally just tie them off a few times, cut that end close, and you're good to go. No yarn needle for these projects. If you're interested in some of the other continuous chain garland crochet patterns and tutorials that I have, I will link those videos down below, and I do have some written patterns available on Etsy if you're interested in the PDF version of any of these patterns. For this project, I'm just going to use a 5mm crochet hook. You can use whatever size hook that you have or that you're most comfortable with, and some 4-weight 100% acrylic yarn that I had in my stash. Again, you can use any yarn that you have. Keep in mind that the smaller weight yarn and the smaller size hook that you use, the smaller that your tree motifs will be. Similarly, the larger weight yarn that you use and the larger size hook that you use, your trees may be just a little bit bigger than mine here. I will put all of these measurements down below so you can see exactly how tall and wide these trees measure using the 5mm crochet hook and a 4-weight acrylic yarn. To start any of these garlands, we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook, and you're going to want to chain 15, and that'll give you that little loop on the end. We're going to slip stitch back into the first chain after we chain 15 for that loop. So chain 15, once you have 15 chains, you're going to find that very first chain and just slip stitch right into it, and that creates a nice little loop. Now this is optional. If you don't want to create a loop, you would just chain the desired number of chains that you want from one end to your first tree motif. So after I have my chain 15 and slip stitch into the first for that loop, I'm going to go ahead and chain 30. Again, you can chain as many as you want to chain before you hit that first tree motif that we're going to work. You should remember this number that you use so you can recreate it at the other end of the garland. So I'm going to chain 30. Once you have your 30 chains, we are ready to start the tree motif. Now it is a granny type tree, so it's really simple. We're going to work in rounds. There's just a couple of little things that we do to keep our chain straight and to carry it up from that center all the way to the top so it will hang nicely. So the first thing that you want to make sure is that your chain is straight. So if you've set your work down and picked it up, just make sure, run your finger down, make sure that those chains are all lying the same way so it's straight and not twisting on you as you're working. Once we have our 30, I'm going to go ahead and chain an additional 3. And now I'm going to work back into the 4th chain away from the hook, and we're just going to slip stitch into the 4th chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, away from the hook. And that creates the tiniest of spaces right there. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to turn our work over. So we're essentially working into the back of that little loop chain that we've made. We're going to work 2 half double crochets right into the center of that loop where that tiny little space is. 2 half double crochets right into that space, and the more that you work into it, the more it will become noticeable, and you'll be able to see a little bit easier where to put your hook. So that chain 2 counts as a half double crochet, and then we've done 2 more half double crochets, so we have a half double crochet granny shell right here. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to work 3 half double crochets right back into that same space. Chain 2, and we're going to work 3 more half double crochets right back into that space. You'll have your chain right here. We're just going to kind of work around it, so hold it off to the left, work your 3 half double crochets. You don't want to work really over top of that chain. You want to let it just lie to the left. So now we've got 1, 2, 3 granny shell clusters. We're going to chain 2, put that chain to the other side so it doesn't get in our way, and slip stitch to the top of our chain 2, and that will join round 1. And now we've got something that looks like a little bit of a triangle. For round 2, we're going to start by slip stitching across and into that first chain 2 space. So you just want to put your hook into those stitches and slip stitch. We just need to get over to this space, and there we go. We're going to do the same thing around. We're just working the granny shell stitch in half double crochets all the way around. Chain 2 and work 2 half double crochets into that same space. Chain 2, and this is a corner, so we're going to work 3 more half double crochets right into that same space. Now we've got a corner. To get over to our next space, we're going to chain 1, find that next space, and work 3 half double crochet, chain 2, 3 half double crochet, all into that same space. We're going to find that next space up here, and this is where our chain is kind of sitting a little bit down there. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work 3 half double crochets, chain 2, and then we're going to do something with our chain so we can carry it up through our tree. So there's my 3 half double crochets. I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to take this chain and I'm going to put it forward. And just kind of hold it with your thumb over there, because you still want to work your last 3 half double crochets right back into that same space. So you're going to want to keep that chain over there as you're working those last 3 half double crochets. One more. And now we've got our chain on the front of our tree. So we're just going to let it sit right there for a minute. We're going to finish up the round. Chain 1, find the top of that first half double crochet, or chain 2, and slip stitch to join. So here's the top of our tree, and there is round number 2. We're going to work one more round of the granny shell, doing the same thing. For round 3, we're going to do the same thing, slip stitch across those first few stitches and into that first chain space. So you can slip stitch into each stitch, or just however many you feel necessary to get over to that space. Once you're in that space, we're going to work that granny shell half double crochet stitch again, chain 2, 2 half double crochets into that same space. This is a corner, so we're going to chain 2 and work 3 half double crochets right back into that same space. And you can probably hear my dog Scout snoring away. She loves to keep me company as I'm filming. So we have our first corner here. Chain 1, we're going to jump to this middle space, and we're just going to work 3 half double crochets into that middle space. Chain 1, we're going to find this next corner space, and we're going to work a corner into it. So 3 half double crochets, chain 2, 3 half double crochets all into the same space. We're going to jump to this next space. We need a chain 1 first, find that next space, and work 3 half double crochets into that next space. Chain 1. Now we're at the top here, so our space is kind of hidden behind this chain. We're going to put that chain in the front for now. We're going to work 3 half double crochets into that space. Chain 2, stop for a second. We're going to take our chain and put it in the back. So you're just going to lie it over because you want it to go through the space that we're creating when we work our next 3 half double crochets into that space. So you just want to bring it up close to the top where we have just chained 2. Find the space, keep that chain all on your right side here. Find that space and work 3 half double crochets. Alright, so here's our chain, that little loop, and here it is on the back. You can see we've worked over it so it goes through that chain 2 space, and now it's on the back, and that is where it's going to stay. So we can just drop it, chain 1, find our next space, work 3 half double crochets into that space, chain 1, and slip stitch to join to the top of our chain 2. And we have joined. So now if we hold up the tree by the little chain, you can see maybe it had started down here and we carried it up, and now it's lying at the top of our tree. So that will make the tree motif hang from that chain right at the top instead of sitting here down where we initially started this motif. For round 4, we are going to work a little tree stump down here. So basically you just need to slip stitch all the way until you get to this first stitch of our shell down here. So I'm just going to slip stitch into each stitch and space. Sometimes those spaces, like in the corners, you'll need to slip stitch 2 or 3 times just to kind of get around that corner. And you don't want to do it super tight, but you also don't want super loose slip stitches either, because these are just the almost like the border end. We're not going to be working any more stitches into them. So I've just worked 2 slip stitches into that space, and I'm just going to evenly slip stitch all the way over these next few stitches and into that next chain 2 space. And now here we are. Here's our 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to work into that first one, and you can always tell where to work because it should be right opposite where that chain is. This is now the bottom of our tree. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and single crochet. Single crochet into the next stitch, and single crochet into the next. So now we've worked a single crochet over those 3 stitches. We're going to chain 2, turn. That chain 2 counts as our first half double crochet, and we're going to work a half double crochet over the next 2 stitches. So just work a half double crochet into the next and 1 more into the next. Now we've got 3 half double crochets, chain 1, turn. We're going to work single crochets. We're going to work a single crochet right into that very first stitch, single crochet, a single crochet into the next, and that's our middle stitch, and then a single crochet into the top of that chain 2, and that's our third and final single crochet. Next, we're going to slip stitch all the way up the tree stump, over and all the way up until we get to this space here at the top, and we're going to join at that point to our chain and continue on. When you're slip stitching into the side of a stitch, you can either find the actual stitch or you can just go into that space. You're just trying to get up the side and around, so loosely just find stitches along the side and slip stitch into them. When you get to a space, you can do 1 or 2 slip stitches, whichever you think is needed for your tree as you're working these slip stitches around the rest of your tree. In the corners, I definitely like to put 2 slip stitches just to get around that corner so it's not so tight. And then I'm just going to kind of evenly work up the side. Sometimes I don't put 2 slip stitches in a space. It just really depends. You can always pull your work away and see if your stitches are too tight, your slip stitches, and maybe you need to add more, or if they look too bunchy, maybe you're adding too many slip stitches. So continuing, we're just going to slip stitch all the way up the side of this tree. And now we're at the top. So here is our chain. You can see I'm kind of pulling on it. It's at the back now. What I'm going to do is put my hook into the space. On the other side, here's our chain. I'm just going to insert my hook into one of those chain stitches, yarn over, pull back through everything, and now we've joined our tree to that chain. You can now continue, chain your desired length until you want another tree motif. So if you want your trees really close, you wouldn't chain very many. I like to stick with 20 to 30 depending on the hook and the yarn I'm using. So if my tree motifs are really big, if I'm using a much larger hook and size weight yarn, I might chain more in between my motifs. If I'm making these really small and tiny, I might not chain as many in between those motifs. So you're just going to chain your desired length all the way, whatever that number is, add 3, and start your tree motif like we did here. At the end, you would chain an extra 15 and then slip stitch back 15 stitches, and you'd create another loop just like what we did over here. To finish, you've got your little yarn tail here. I like to just wrap it like this, pull it up gently until it's right at the base of that loop, and then pull super tight. Do that once or twice, cut that yarn close, and that's it. So as you can see, a super fun, quick tree crochet garland, no ends to weave in. You do this all in one go. It makes it much more relaxing in a way not to have to create all of these tree motifs separately, sew them up, weave in all the ends. I love creating these continuous crochet garlands just so I don't have to weave in all of my ends. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Like I said before, if you're interested in some of my other continuous crochet chain garland patterns and tutorials, I will have those down below, so check those out. And until next time, happy crocheting everyone. Bye.